Greetings. It's another nice rainy day here in Hawaii. They're predicting snow on the mountain by Tuesday. Winter's here. A little early. This weather is more like January than November, but what are you going to do? Weather's weird everywhere. So this video is 101 on transplanting. I've had quite a few questions on the subject of when to transplant plants. Are they ready yet? You know, often what I do find that the more novice gardeners have a tendency to want to push that envelope and try to get that stuff transplanted before it's ready. You're, in most cases, just in simply put, you're better off letting the plants sit for a bit of a while until you know they're well rooted into their containers. Most plants, as far as trees and shrubs and that, if they get a little pot bound, they'll tolerate a little bit of root pruning. It isn't going to hurt them, most of them. There are a few. Passion vine's better off not pruning the roots. Bougainvillea is probably better off not pruning the roots with those plants, but most other things, if they get a little tight, you know, clip them. Anyway, so this is a difficult thing to actually explain as far as when I decide that it's time to transplant and how I make that decision. It's for me, I don't use this for that. I use this thing back here. This is very much a seat of the pants decision for me. I just kind of walk around and go, shoot, time to transplant. But mostly, it's a size factor and a time factor. If I know that plant's been there for a while and it's really gotten pretty large, it's probably time to shift it up or get rid of it, one or the other. See, around here, sometimes I don't transplant. I just give somebody a deal or find somebody who needs it and I get it the heck out of here. That's also another way to deal with this problem. But, so, look, it's raining. It's not going to be a great day for me to tour the nursery, but I do have some plants here close at hand. So, as I look around, I notice right here on the end of the table, I've got a whole bunch of cacao. That's the plant that we get chocolate from. And I know they've been here a while. I planted out a mass of them because they were going out of here like a house on fire. And then one day when I had a whole lot to sell, they stopped selling for a while. They'll go back. But in the meantime, the stock I had is really getting too large for those 3.5-inch pots. Right here you see how big these things are. Here you can see this is really a large plant. Okay, what do we got? Oh man, we got almost 1.5 feet in a 3.5-inch pot. Now around here, because of the kind of weather we have, I can actually get away with this. It's one reason that I do nursery stock here, and it's one reason I do nursery stock in small pots, because with the amount of rainfall we get, I can leave plants for quite a while in small containers as long as I feed, and they're going to grow fine. Okay, there's a limit, but it is easier here. In California, if I left a plant get to this size in that pot, I'd be watering that thing every half a day or it'd be dying. Well, not around Mountain View, so it's one reason we love this place for growing nursery stock and why there's so many guys working here as growers. So many growers here. Anyway, that's a plant that in my judgment requires being transplanted. Now I'm doing that simply because I know there was time in the nursery and it's been fairly long, last summer sometime, and the plant is just plain big. So the next thing we do, and this is really important, don't be afraid to look. Anytime you have a problem with a plant or you want to know is it transplantable or whatever, you know, look underneath. And so take your hand, put your fingers around the stem like this, turn the pot over, and just go, ah. Now if that didn't do it, then you go, ah, ah. That's probably going to do it. Let's see. Well, it's pretty pot bound. This is pretty good, but it's coming out. Here it goes. All right, let's see. Yeah. Okay, see, we're starting to circle. Now this really isn't as bad off as it looks, surprisingly enough. This plant is really in fairly good shape, considering how large it is in this pot. But it's ready. The roots right here, you can see that they're beginning to circle, right? Okay, now some plants do not bind soil well. This is one. It's not a real good soil binder. Another one that's always falling apart when I pull it out of a pot is citrus. Citrus is a bear because no matter what container it's in, 9 times out of 10 it's going to come falling apart on you. Anyway, let's take this in and do the next step. So here we are in the Green Garden Guy's potting house, and I have a gallon pot. I have put about half a pot of potting soil in it. I get so many questions again. What kind of soil do you use? What kind of fertilizer do you use? Okay, this time I'm going to put it in the camera. Okay, there you go. Now I usually don't do this because I don't sell this stuff. So here I am advertising for somebody, but whatever. I like the stuff. It's good. And so you can read that right there. It says Pro Mix, although I think the X is kind of beat off. Right over there it says HP. That means high porosity. There it says mycorrhizae. And so this is Pro Mix. HP means high porosity with mycorrhizae. And those of you who don't know what mycorrhizae is a fungal inoculant that has association with plants, and it makes your plants grow better. That's all you really need to know. It's fungus and your plants grow better. So if you want to go into it a little deeper than that, you can. There's lots and lots of information out there about mycorrhizal associations. Being both a plant and a mushroom guy, well, us mushroom guys knew all about mycorrhizae long before the garden and the nursery industry did. I used to hunt mushrooms back in Wisconsin by scanning the landscape with a pair of binoculars from a high point, and when I knew I wanted a mushroom on a certain type of tree, I just scanned looking for stands of trees that looked particularly healthy. Then I'd walk out, maybe sometimes a mile in the woods even, to get to that stand, but almost always when I went there and I found a stand that from a distance was obviously green and robust, I would almost always find the proper fungi I was looking for at the right time of year. And that's what the mycorrhizal association's about. It grows with the trees on the roots, it helps them feed. This right here is what Pro Mix looks like. I mean, mostly this stuff is milled sphagnum peat and perlite, and there's a few other things in here, but it's not a real complicated thing. You can make your own. Okay, I don't bother. It's a lot of work anymore. Anyway, that was something I did years ago. So here we have the pot ready, half a pot of soil. Here we have the cacao plant. We have already discussed this right here, so I'm going to repeat it for the camera. There we go. She came out nice. Then we're just going to turn this thing over. We'll stick it into the pot. There we go. Just like that. Alright, next I'm going to hold the plant up straight, and then I'm going to take this scoop full of soil over here, and I'm going to sift some of it down inside the pot around the plant. Next, I'm going to pack this down so it's firm and the plant will stand upright. There we go. That's most of it. This is why sometimes get a little confused. I'm not sure why it is that people find transplanting so difficult, but that's about all there is to it. Alright, so that's simple. Okay. Plant looks big. Take the plant out of the pot. Plant's pretty tight in the pot, got lots of roots. Yeah, go ahead, transplant it. So, right here now, I have an old beat up jar that has contained some time-release fertilizer. And how am I going to drag the bag over here because it weighs 50 pounds? But this is NutriCoat 180. I believe it's a triple 14. I think that's what that recipe is. Anyway, it's a balanced time-release fertilizer. It's similar to Osmocote, which there's a triple 14 on that. I like the NutriCoat 180 because this stuff is supposed to feed for 6 months. That's why they call it 180, half a year. But anyway, around here we get too much rain for it to do that. It runs out in a few months. So now if you're on the mainland or you're in drier climates where it doesn't rain like it does here, you probably want to put the fertilizer halfway down inside the pot. But here in Hawaii we get so much water that if we do that, the fertilizer is going to run out the bottom of the pot. By that I mean that the water will carry the fertilizer, the goodness of it, below the plant before the plant can even get to it. So in this environment, I never put fertilizers under plants. Sometimes I'll put them next to a transplant right near the top. That works. Otherwise, most of the time, I just sprinkle this stuff in here. You use this product at the rate of 1 tablespoon per gallon of container size. So this container gets 1 tablespoon. So, pressed it down, take it out, I'm going to throw it in the rain. I won't even need to water this in. If you were in a place where it wasn't raining today, definitely get it out there, get the garden hose in it, get everything dampened and settled down. Alright, so for my next act, right here, this is a 6-pack with some really jumbo lilikoi, the passion fruit, Passiflora edulis. These kind of got lost in the upstairs table here in the nursery. I didn't notice they were back there, hiding behind some gallon stuff. So this really is a little bit overgrown. I usually would not let them get this big. But stuff happens, right? And here's an excellent example of, yeah, it's ready to transplant. What do you think? Man, some of this stuff, again, 1.5 feet high in a 6-pack. So, as I mentioned before, passion vines, we don't really disrupt the roots usually, so I'm going to plop these in as is, and they will start to root out. Next thing then is you got to get them out of the cells, right? I already have a flat sitting here that has the 3.5-inch pot I use. These pots are filled with the potting soil. I've gone through and I have put a hole in each one of the pots using my hand. Now, maybe if I was less tactile, you know, touchy, I'd probably use a dibble, which is an English tool that you boom, and you can make one. You know, kind of rounded, pointed stick with a T-handle. That's a dibble. You can make holes that way too. I get stuff out of 6-packs mostly by squeezing. I pinch a little like that, and then I pull. Ah, look at that. It came right out. How's it look? Well, it's really not too bad. That's, what the heck? It'll pass if you don't look too close. Alright, so next thing then, I'm just going to take the plugs, push them down in the divots I made here, like that. Make sure the divots are deep enough. There we go. So I walked up the top table that I don't get to the far end of very often, and behind some great big gallon cans, I looked and I went, oh my goodness, look at that, there's passion vines back there. They ain't too bad off, they look nice, actually. They're big ones. These won't take too long to root into these containers, so I can put them on the main table, that's for sure. So, again, just taking these puppies, digging a hole in the pot with my hand to make sure the hole's big enough, pulling the weeds off them, and stuffing them in there. And I'm packing them down pretty hard. Good contact with the soil is a real good idea. I am not a big one on fluffy. All right, a lot of folks love to fluff dirt up and all that. I almost never do fluffing dirt generally, whether it's in the garden or in pots or whatever. It generally means air spaces, and air spaces usually mean drying out. So when I get done planting trees in the field, it is not unusual that I will actually take my boot heel and go on the soil around the base of the trees to make sure that those plants are firmed in. You know, here in the potting shop, well, we're just going to squeeze it by hand. Nice roots, yeah? What you think? And these have been in there quite a while, but I really don't see that they're suffering much. The roots kind of fell apart there, and they're looking good. I don't believe I'm going to have any problem with this at all, even though I lost them up there. So that's why I say I just don't push the envelope. I get to it when I get to it, and that's that. So, I've had a few folks who were worried early on who was pushing this thing along in their gardens, and that probably could do more harm by pushing too hard and fast than by waiting a while. You're better off waiting a while. Don't be impatient. It's going to take you a while anyway to get a tree to grow. Always does take some time. Alright, so now it looks to me like I might be able to use just a little bit more soil on top. So I'm going to sprinkle a little bit just to be sure there's no holes around these. Okay, and then again. That settled them in nice. The next thing is these little pots. They're going to take about a teaspoon of this stuff per container. Now, you know, each fertilizer is different, all right? And so, you know, I get, again, questions about application rates and all this, and I'm just going to tell everybody that asks me those questions, read the label, you know, because I don't know what you got in your hand, really, or how you're planning to use it. But in the case of most of the time-release, pelletized, inorganic fertilizers like Osmocote or NutriCote, 1 teaspoon per 3.5 or 4 inch pot is adequate. 1 tablespoon in a gallon container is right. There you have it. Transplanting 101. I'm not really sure if there's anything else to say about this subject, but I hope watching it being done helps somebody out a little bit. The main thing is, don't get in a hurry. Make sure the plants are good size before you move them. Now, in the case of plants like vegetables, okay, vegetables, they really got to roll right along. There is no advantage to growing up a great big cabbage plant before you take it to the garden, or it's really harmful with tomato plants. I don't know how many times I have seen people trying to grow great big huge tomato plants in 5-gallon buckets even before they take them out. It's not a really good idea. There have been some serious university studies on tomatoes that indicate transplants that are between 4 and 6 weeks old before they get to the garden, from seed germination to garden, 4 to 6 weeks, is perfect. An 8-week-old transplant will give you a slightly earlier crop of tomatoes, but your crop will probably only be about half the size of what you'll eventually get off the 4-week-old plant. So with tomatoes, as long as they're big enough to handle them without crushing them or something, that's the time. With most of the trees, vines, shrubs, and this sort of you know, fruit plant nursery stock and such, these are far more tolerant to this because these are long lifespan plants. And so plants that have really, really, really long lifespans, you can let them sit in the containers for quite a while to make sure they're rooted before you take them and try to move them. You're better off waiting a while until they've meshed. There are a few exceptions, and so as you really get into this, what you will find out is that plants do have some specific requirements because they're sort of special. The pawpaw. Pawpaw, it's well known that we don't let that thing sit in pots long at all. It's got a great big taproot on it, and if you allow it to grow in a container for too long, the taproot spirals, and especially if your containers are short. If you're using tall, long, skinny containers, then it maybe is a little more forgiving. But again, don't let them sit in the containers long, because if you cramp the taproot, you're going to lose the wonderful drought tolerance that the plant has. Because if you get it out early when it's a nice young little tree and let it tunnel down into the earth, it's going to take dry weather really well for you. It may never recover from having the taproot cramped. Other trees with taproots, oak, there's one, walnut, another. Both of those probably best. Move them into the field quickly. Don't try to grow great big huge ones in pots before you go. The koa tree is definitely a case where plants that are more than about 12 inches high, when you're moving them to the field, anything beyond that, it's counterproductive. Koa does not like being cramped. And so, you know, you do your individual research. It's all out there. I don't make this stuff up. It doesn't come out of my head. It goes in my head. I remember it and I bring it back. So, you know, everything I'm stating here is pretty much stuff I pulled out of a book or pulled off the web or, you know, got from another expert or something. I just happen to remember it. That's my job, is disseminating information. That's what I do well. But, you know, so look at the specifics. But most plants, just as I said, let them get rooted quite well. Okay, aloha, happy gardening. There you go for Transplant 101, and don't forget to hang loose.